Question 1. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential for significant regulatory noncompliance in the proposed enterprise wireless network design for a healthcare facility in the United States. The design team has identified several areas where the network's functionality might be enhanced by exceeding certain FCC emission limits and by implementing less stringent data encryption protocols to improve client-device compatibility. Which design approach best mitigates these identified risks while adhering to U.S. regulatory frameworks? Option A. Focus on achieving the highest possible Wi-Fi signal strength and lowest latency by utilizing maximum permissible power levels and the most basic encryption methods to ensure broad client device support and optimal performance. Option B. Implement the proposed design with slightly elevated emission levels and simplified encryption, relying on the facility's existing IT security measures to compensate for any regulatory gaps. Option C. Assume that general wireless networking best practices are sufficient for compliance and proceed with the design, addressing any potential regulatory issues only if they are explicitly raised by the facility's legal department. Option D. Prioritize adherence to all FCC emission limits and implement robust, industry-standard encryption protocols compliant with HIPAA and other relevant U.S. data privacy laws, even if it requires selecting specific client devices or adjusting network performance expectations. Correct answer is D. Prioritize adherence to all FCC emission limits and implement robust, industry-standard encryption protocols compliant with HIPAA and other relevant U.S. data privacy laws, even if it requires selecting specific client devices or adjusting network performance expectations. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise wireless design, balancing the need for robust, high-performance Wi-Fi with the strict regulatory requirements governing radio frequency emissions and data privacy. The challenge lies in understanding how these regulations, particularly those pertaining to the U.S., as implied by the exam context, directly impact design choices for wireless networks. A failure to adhere to these regulations can lead to significant penalties, operational disruptions, and reputational damage. The stakeholder perspective is crucial here, as different departments, e.g., IT, legal, compliance, operations, will have varying priorities and interpretations of these requirements. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the U.S. regulatory framework for wireless communications, specifically the FCC, Federal Communications Commission rules. This includes knowledge of spectrum allocation, power limits, interference mitigation techniques, and data handling requirements, e.g., HIPAA for healthcare, PCI DSS for payment card data. A design that proactively incorporates these regulations from the outset by selecting appropriate hardware, configuring channels and power levels correctly, and implementing robust security protocols demonstrates best professional practice. This approach ensures compliance, minimizes the risk of fines or legal action, and builds trust with stakeholders by demonstrating due diligence and a commitment to responsible network operation. It aligns with the ethical obligation to operate within legal boundaries and protect user data. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that prioritizes only performance metrics without considering regulatory compliance is fundamentally flawed. This could involve using higher power settings than permitted by the FCC to achieve broader coverage, which directly violates emission standards and can lead to interference with other licensed services. Similarly, neglecting data encryption standards or access control mechanisms, even if they improve network speed, will be a failure to comply with data privacy regulations like HIPAA or PCI DSS, leading to severe legal and financial repercussions. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that generic Wi-Fi best practices are sufficient without verifying their alignment with specific U.S. regulations. This oversight can result in noncompliance due to a lack of awareness of jurisdiction-specific rules. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing wireless networks must adopt a risk-based approach. This involves identifying potential regulatory pitfalls early in the design phase. The decision-making process should begin with a comprehensive review of all applicable U.S. federal and state regulations relevant to the specific industry and location of the deployment. This should be followed by a gap analysis, comparing the proposed design against these regulatory requirements. Stakeholder engagement is vital to ensure all concerns are addressed. When faced with conflicting priorities, the regulatory and legal requirements must always take precedence, professionals should consult with legal and compliance experts when in doubt. The goal is to design a network that is not only functional and performant, but also legally sound and ethically responsible. Question 2. Operational review demonstrates that the existing wireless network in a U.S.-based enterprise is experiencing intermittent performance issues and occasional interference complaints from users. The IT department is planning a significant upgrade to a new Wi-Fi 6 deployment across multiple office locations. The primary goal is to enhance user experience and support a growing number of connected devices. The design team is considering various approaches to the new wireless infrastructure, which approach best aligns with U.S. regulatory requirements and professional best practices for designing a compliant and reliable enterprise wireless network. Option A. Prioritize the highest possible signal strength and widest coverage area by selecting access points with maximum transmit power, regardless of specific FCC power output limitations for unlicensed devices, to ensure all users have a strong connection. Option B. Focus on implementing the most cost-effective access points available, even if they are not explicitly certified for use in the United States, to meet the budget constraints, and rely on the assumption that they will not cause significant interference. Option C. Deploy the latest Wi-Fi 6 access points that offer advanced features and high throughput, assuming that all modern wireless equipment automatically complies with U.S. regulations without the need for explicit verification or specific configuration adjustments. Option D. Select Wi-Fi 6 access points that are FCC certified for operation in the United States and configure them according to manufacturer specifications and FCC Part 15 guidelines, ensuring that power levels and channel usage adhere to regulatory limits to prevent harmful interference. The correct answer is D. Select Wi-Fi 6 access points that are FCC certified for operation in the United States and configure them according to manufacturer specifications and FCC Part 15 guidelines, ensuring that power levels and channel usage adhere to regulatory limits to prevent harmful interference. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise wireless network design, balancing the need for robust security with the practical requirements of user access and operational efficiency. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying the relevant U.S. regulatory framework, specifically the FCC regulations concerning radio frequency emissions and device certification, to a new wireless deployment. A deep understanding of these regulations is crucial to avoid noncompliance, which can lead to significant fines and operational disruptions. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to FCC Part 15 rules, which govern unlicensed radio frequency devices. This includes ensuring that the deployed Wi-Fi equipment operates within designated frequency bands, does not cause harmful interference to other licensed services, and meets power output limitations. By selecting equipment certified by the FCC for operation in the U.S. and configuring it according to manufacturer specifications and regulatory guidelines, the design ensures legal and ethical operation. This proactive stance on compliance is best professional practice as it safeguards the organization from legal repercussions and ensures the reliable functioning of the wireless network without interfering with other critical services. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on maximizing Wi-Fi signal strength without considering regulatory limits is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to exceeding FCC power limits, potentially causing harmful interference to licensed services like aviation, public safety communications. Such an action would be a direct violation of FCC Part 15 regulations, carrying severe penalties. Another incorrect approach that ignores the need for FCC certification for all deployed wireless devices is also a significant regulatory failure. Uncertified devices may not meet emission standards, leading to unpredictable interference and potential legal issues. Furthermore, an approach that prioritizes user convenience over security by implementing weak or non-existent encryption protocols, while not directly an FCC violation, represents an ethical failure in protecting sensitive organizational data and user privacy, which is a fundamental responsibility of network designers. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory landscape, in this case, U.S. FCC regulations. This should be followed by an assessment of the specific deployment requirements and a selection of hardware and configurations that demonstrably meet both functional and compliance needs. A risk-based approach, identifying potential compliance gaps and developing mitigation strategies, is essential. Regular review of regulatory updates and best practices ensures ongoing adherence. Question 3. Benchmark analysis indicates that a newly acquired subsidiary, operating under U.S. federal and state regulations, requires a robust wireless network to support its customer-facing operations. The subsidiary's management is primarily focused on immediate deployment speed and cost-effectiveness to integrate quickly with the parent company's services. However, the parent company's IT security and legal departments have expressed concerns about potential data privacy violations and adherence to U.S. regulatory frameworks, which design approach best balances the subsidiary's immediate needs with the parent company's compliance and security mandates. Option A. Implement a basic wireless network using readily available, inexpensive equipment to ensure immediate operational capability, with plans to upgrade security and compliance features in a later phase. Option B. Prioritize a rapid deployment of a cost-effective wireless solution that meets the subsidiary's stated functional requirements, deferring detailed security and compliance reviews until after integration. Option C. Focus solely on the technical specifications provided by the subsidiary's management, assuming their existing knowledge of U.S. regulations is sufficient for the new wireless deployment. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive assessment of the subsidiary's data handling practices. Identify all applicable U.S. federal and state regulatory requirements, and design a wireless network that integrates with the parent company's existing security infrastructure and compliance policies, even if it introduces a slight delay in deployment. The correct answer is B. Prioritize a rapid deployment of a cost-effective wireless solution that meets the subsidiary's stated functional requirements, deferring detailed security and compliance reviews until after integration. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise wireless design, balancing the immediate needs of a business unit with the long-term strategic goals and regulatory compliance of the entire organization. The stakeholder perspective is critical here, as different departments will have varying priorities and understanding of technical constraints and legal obligations. The challenge lies in translating these diverse perspectives into a technically sound and compliant wireless network design. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a holistic understanding of stakeholder requirements and regulatory mandates before proposing a technical solution. By engaging with all relevant parties, including IT security and legal/compliance officers, the designer ensures that the proposed network design not only meets the functional needs of the business unit, but also adheres to all applicable U.S. federal and state regulations concerning data privacy, security, and spectrum usage. This proactive engagement minimizes the risk of costly redesigns, security breaches, or regulatory penalties. It demonstrates a commitment to responsible and ethical network engineering, aligning technical solutions with business objectives and legal frameworks. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the immediate functional requirements of the business unit without considering broader organizational policies or regulatory obligations is professionally unacceptable. This failure to consult with IT security and legal/compliance teams could lead to a design that violates U.S. data privacy laws, e.g., HIPAA for healthcare data, COPPA for children's data, or state-specific privacy laws or security standards, resulting in significant fines, reputational damage, and potential legal action. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes cost savings above all else, potentially by using uncertified or unauthorized wireless equipment or by neglecting necessary security controls, is also professionally flawed. This disregards the regulatory requirement for using approved equipment and implementing robust security measures to protect sensitive data, as mandated by various U.S. federal regulations and industry best practices. Such a decision could expose the organization to significant risks, including data breaches and non-compliance penalties. Finally, an approach that assumes existing network infrastructure is sufficient without a thorough assessment of its capacity, security, and compliance with current U.S. regulations is negligent. This oversight can lead to performance issues, security vulnerabilities, and non-compliance, as older infrastructure may not meet modern security standards or regulatory requirements for data handling and transmission. The professional decision-making process should involve a structured approach. 1. Identify all stakeholders and their requirements, including functional, security, and compliance needs. 2. Thoroughly research and understand all applicable U.S. federal and state regulations relevant to the organization's industry and data types. 3. Assess existing infrastructure against current and future needs and regulatory mandates. 4. Develop design options that balance stakeholder needs, technical feasibility, security, and regulatory compliance. 5. Engage in open communication and collaboration with stakeholders, especially IT security and legal/compliance, to validate the proposed design. 6. Document all design decisions, justifications, and compliance considerations. Question 4. The review process indicates that a new wireless network is being designed for a U.S.-based hospital. The primary objective is to provide secure access for medical devices, clinical staff, and authorized visitors, while ensuring the confidentiality and integrity of protected health information. 5. In compliance with relevant U.S. healthcare regulations. The design must accommodate a high density of users and devices and support real-time data transmission for critical patient monitoring systems. What is the most appropriate security strategy for this wireless network? Option A. Implement WPA3 Enterprise with AES 256 encryption and multi-factor authentication for all user and device access, coupled with robust network segmentation using VLAN to isolate critical patient data systems. Option B. Utilize basic SSID hiding and MAC address filtering for all wireless access points to deter casual unauthorized access. Option C. Configure WPA2 Personal (PSK) with a single, strong passphrase shared across all medical devices and clinical staff to simplify network management. Option D. Deploy an open, unencrypted wireless network to ensure maximum accessibility for all users and devices, as speed and ease of access are paramount for patient care. The correct answer is A. Implement WPA3 Enterprise with AES 256 encryption and multi-factor authentication for all user and device access, coupled with robust network segmentation using VLAN to isolate critical patient data systems. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in wireless network design, balancing the need for robust security with the practicalities of user access and regulatory compliance. The challenge lies in interpreting and applying the specific security requirements mandated by the U.S. Regulatory Framework for Healthcare Data, HIPAA, within the context of a wireless network. A misinterpretation or misapplication of these regulations can lead to significant security vulnerabilities, data breaches, and severe legal and financial repercussions. The need for a secure, yet functional wireless environment for patient care systems requires careful consideration of encryption, authentication, and access control mechanisms that align with HIPAA security rule. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves implementing a robust security architecture that directly addresses the requirements of HIPAA security rule. This includes strong encryption protocols, e.g., WPA3 Enterprise with AES 256 for data in transit, and multi-factor authentication, MFA, for user access to the wireless network. Network segmentation, using VLAN, is crucial to isolate sensitive patient data systems from general guest or administrative networks. Regular security audits and vulnerability assessments are also essential to ensure ongoing compliance and identify potential weaknesses. This approach prioritizes the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of protected health information, PHI, as mandated by HIPAA, demonstrating best professional practice by proactively mitigating risks and adhering to legal obligations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing WPA2 PSK with a shared passphrase for all users is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This method lacks individual accountability and is highly susceptible to unauthorized access if the passphrase is compromised or shared inappropriately. It fails to meet HIPAA requirements for unique user identification and access control, increasing the risk of unauthorized disclosure of PHI. Deploying an open, unencrypted wireless network for patient care systems is a severe violation of HIPAA security rule. This exposes PHI to interception and unauthorized access, directly contravening the mandates for protecting the confidentiality and integrity of electronic PHI. It represents a gross ethical failure and a direct breach of legal obligations. Utilizing only basic SSID hiding and MAC address filtering without encryption or strong authentication is also insufficient. SSID hiding offers minimal security and can be easily bypassed. MAC address filtering is easily spoofed and does not provide a reliable security control. These measures do not meet the encryption and access control standards required by HIPAA, leaving PHI vulnerable. Question 5. Market research demonstrates a growing demand for enhanced wireless capabilities, including support for the 6 GHz spectrum and precise indoor location services. A large enterprise client, operating primarily within the United States, has expressed a strong desire to implement these advanced features to improve operational efficiency and customer engagement. However, the client has also stipulated a firm budget that is significantly lower than the estimated cost of a full-scale Wi-Fi 6E deployment, with integrated, high-accuracy location tracking. Their current wireless infrastructure is several years old and utilizes older Wi-Fi standards. Considering these constraints and the need to comply with U.S. FCC regulations, which design approach best balances the client's aspirations with their financial realities and existing infrastructure limitations. Option A. Recommend upgrading only the wireless access points to the latest Wi-Fi 6E standard, without assessing or upgrading the underlying network switches, cabling, or power infrastructure. Option B. Prioritize the implementation of the most sophisticated indoor location services available, even if it requires a partial and potentially unstable wireless network upgrade, to showcase cutting-edge technology. Option C. Design a foundational Wi-Fi 6, 802.11ax network that offers substantial performance improvements and is cost-effective, while incorporating a plan for advanced location services using cost-efficient technologies like BLE beacons, with a clear roadmap for future Wi-Fi 6E integration when budget allows. Option D. Propose an immediate, comprehensive deployment of Wi-Fi 6E access points across the entire campus, assuming the client will find additional funding once they see the advanced capabilities. The correct answer is C. Design a foundational Wi-Fi 6, 802.11ax network that offers substantial performance improvements and is cost-effective, while incorporating a plan for advanced location services using cost-efficient technologies like BLE beacons, with a clear roadmap for future Wi-Fi 6E integration when budget allows. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise wireless design, balancing the need for advanced features and performance with the constraints of budget and existing infrastructure. The client's desire for a cutting-edge solution, specifically mentioning Wi-Fi 6E and advanced location services, directly conflicts with their stated budget limitations and the reality of their current network's age and capabilities. This creates a tension between technical aspiration and practical feasibility, requiring a design that is both innovative and cost-effective, while also adhering to relevant U.S. regulatory frameworks for wireless deployment. The challenge lies in identifying a design approach that prioritizes essential functionality and future-proofing within these constraints, rather than simply proposing the most technically advanced and potentially unaffordable solution. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a phased implementation strategy that addresses the most critical needs first, while laying the groundwork for future upgrades. This involves designing a robust Wi-Fi 6, 802.11ax deployment as the foundational layer, which offers significant performance improvements over older standards and is more cost-effective than immediate Wi-Fi 6E adoption. Incorrect approaches analysis. Proposing an immediate, full-scale Wi-Fi 6E deployment without a clear path to address the budget constraints is professionally unsound. It ignores the client's explicit financial limitations and demonstrates a lack of understanding of their business realities. Ethically, it could lead to a project that is doomed from the start due to lack of funding, wasting the client's time and resources. From a regulatory perspective, while Wi-Fi 6E itself is regulated by the FCC, the failure here is in the design process, not necessarily in the technology itself. The failure is in proposing a solution that is not realistically implementable within the given parameters, suggesting a design that relies solely on upgrading the existing access points to the latest standard without considering the underlying network infrastructure. Switches. Cabling is also problematic. This approach fails to acknowledge that older infrastructure may not support the bandwidth or power over Ethernet (PoE) requirements of newer access points, leading to performance bottlenecks and potential hardware incompatibility. This is a failure in holistic network design, which is critical for enterprise wireless. Could also lead to noncompliance with performance expectations, indirectly impacting user experience, and potentially leading to complaints that could be construed as a failure to meet service-level objectives, which are often implicitly or explicitly part of a professional engagement. Focusing exclusively on the most advanced location services, such as those requiring dedicated hardware or complex integrations, without first establishing a stable and capable wireless foundation, is also a flawed approach. This prioritizes a secondary feature over the primary function of reliable wireless connectivity. It risks over-engineering a solution that cannot be adequately supported by the core network, leading to unreliable location data and user dissatisfaction. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the interdependencies within a network design and could lead to a solution that is technically complex but operationally fragile. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of client requirements, including both technical aspirations and budgetary constraints. This involves active listening and probing questions to uncover the true priorities. The next step is to assess the existing infrastructure and identify potential limitations. Based on this comprehensive understanding, a tiered design approach should be developed, prioritizing essential functionality and offering clear upgrade paths for future enhancements. This iterative process ensures that the proposed solution is not only technically sound, but also financially viable and strategically aligned with the client's long-term goals. Adherence to relevant U.S. regulatory frameworks, such as FCC guidelines, must be a constant consideration throughout the design process. Question 6. Assessment of the most appropriate strategy for introducing a new wireless network infrastructure in a U.S.-based hospital, considering patient data privacy regulations and the need for uninterrupted critical services. Option A. Conduct a comprehensive site survey and risk assessment, followed by a pilot deployment in a non-critical area to validate performance and security before a phased full-scale rollout. Option B. Implement the new wireless network using default vendor configurations for security and performance, assuming these are adequate for a healthcare environment. Option C. Immediately deploy the new wireless infrastructure across all hospital departments to leverage the latest technology and achieve economies of scale as quickly as possible. Option D. Prioritize the lowest cost hardware and installation options to meet the budget, with security and performance being secondary considerations. Correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive site survey and risk assessment, followed by a pilot deployment in a non-critical area to validate performance and security before a phased full-scale rollout. Explanation. Scenario analysis. Designing a wireless network for a healthcare facility presents significant challenges due to the critical nature of patient care and the stringent regulatory environment. The need for high availability, robust security, and compliance with data privacy laws, such as HIPAA in the U.S., makes decision-making complex. The integration of new technologies, like EOT medical devices, adds further layers of complexity, requiring careful consideration of interoperability, performance, and security implications. Balancing these factors while adhering to budget constraints and operational requirements demands a structured and informed decision-making process. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a phased deployment strategy, starting with a comprehensive site survey and risk assessment. This involves understanding the existing infrastructure, identifying potential RF interference sources, and evaluating the specific needs of different departments, e.g., patient rooms, operating theaters, administrative areas. Pilot deployment in a non-critical area allows for real-world testing of performance, security, and user experience before a full rollout. This iterative approach minimizes disruption, allows for adjustments based on feedback, and ensures compliance with relevant regulations by validating security controls and data handling procedures in a controlled environment. This aligns with best practices for enterprise network design, emphasizing thorough planning and risk mitigation, which are paramount in regulated industries. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a full-scale deployment without prior testing or a pilot phase is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It risks widespread service disruption, potential data breaches due to unvalidated security configurations, and noncompliance with patient data privacy laws. Such an approach demonstrates a disregard for due diligence and a failure to adequately assess and mitigate risks, which is professionally unacceptable in a healthcare setting. Adopting a best-effort approach to security, relying solely on vendor defaults without customization or validation, is another critical failure. This leaves the network vulnerable to known exploits and fails to meet the security standards required for protecting sensitive patient information. It also violates the principle of due care and diligence expected in network design, particularly in a high-risk environment. Focusing solely on cost reduction without a thorough evaluation of performance and security implications is also a flawed strategy. While budget is a consideration, compromising essential network functionalities or security measures to save money can lead to increased long-term costs due to downtime, security incidents, and potential regulatory fines. This approach neglects the primary objective of providing a reliable and secure network for patient care. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of project requirements, including regulatory mandates and business objectives. This framework should incorporate a thorough risk assessment and mitigation plan. For wireless network design, this translates to 1. Requirements gathering. Understand all functional, performance, security, and regulatory needs. 2. Design and planning. Develop a detailed design including RF planning, security architecture, and integration strategies. 3. Proof of concept/pilot deployment. Test critical components and functionalities in a controlled environment. 4. Phased deployment. Roll out the network in stages, allowing for monitoring, feedback, and adjustments. 5. Ongoing monitoring and optimization. Continuously assess performance, security, and compliance. This systematic approach ensures that all critical aspects are addressed, risks are managed, and the final solution meets the highest standards of reliability, security, and compliance. Question 7. Comparative studies suggest that designing secure and efficient wireless networks requires a nuanced approach to access control. A financial services firm, operating under strict data privacy regulations, is planning a new wireless network deployment. They require a solution that ensures the confidentiality and integrity of client data while minimizing disruption to employee productivity. Which of the following design principles best addresses these competing requirements within a robust security framework? Option A. Employ WPA2PSK with a strong passphrase for all wireless connections, relying on the passphrase's complexity to secure the network. Option B. Utilize a single, complex pre-shared key, PSK, for all wireless access points across the entire organization. Option C. Deploy an open wireless network with no authentication or encryption to ensure maximum accessibility for all employees. Option D. Implement WPA3 Enterprise with EAPTLS for user authentication and enforce role-based access control (RBAC) for network segmentation and resource access. The correct answer is D. Implement WPA3 Enterprise with EAPTLS for user authentication and enforce role-based access control (RBAC) for network segmentation and resource access. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise wireless design, balancing the need for robust security with the practicalities of user experience and operational efficiency. The core conflict lies between implementing stringent access controls to meet regulatory compliance and ensuring that legitimate users can access the network seamlessly without undue friction. The professional challenge is to design a solution that is both secure and usable, avoiding overrestriction that hinders productivity or underrestriction that creates security vulnerabilities. The need for a decision-making framework arises from the potential for conflicting requirements and the impact of design choices on various stakeholders, including IT security, end users, and the business itself. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation of security controls, starting with a baseline of strong authentication and encryption, and then layering additional security measures based on risk assessment and user role. This aligns with best practices in network security design, emphasizing a defense-in-depth strategy. Specifically, utilizing WPA3 Enterprise with EAPTLS for authentication provides strong, certificate-based security, which is a robust and widely accepted standard for enterprise wireless networks. This approach directly addresses the need for secure data transmission and user verification, crucial for compliance with data protection regulations. The subsequent implementation of role-based access control, RBAC, ensures that users only have access to the resources they need, minimizing the attack surface. This methodical, risk-informed approach is professionally sound because it prioritizes security without sacrificing essential functionality, demonstrating a comprehensive understanding of both technical requirements and business needs. It also allows for iterative refinement based on monitoring and feedback, a hallmark of effective network design. Incorrect approaches analysis, implementing a simple pre-shared key, PSK, for all users, even with a strong passphrase, is an incorrect approach because it lacks granular control and is susceptible to credential sharing or compromise. This fails to meet the security requirements for enterprise environments, particularly those subject to compliance mandates that require individual user authentication and accountability. It creates a significant security vulnerability and an ethical failure in protecting sensitive data. Deploying an open network with no authentication or encryption is fundamentally flawed and represents a severe regulatory and ethical failure. This approach completely disregards the need for data confidentiality and integrity, exposing the network and its users to a multitude of threats, including eavesdropping, man-in-the-middle attacks, and unauthorized access to sensitive information. It would be a direct violation of most data protection and privacy regulations. Implementing WPA2 PSK with a complex passphrase, but no further segmentation or monitoring, is an improvement over an open network, but still falls short of enterprise-grade security. While it offers some encryption, it lacks the robust authentication and granular access control provided by WPA3 Enterprise and RBAC. The inability to individually authenticate users and track their activity makes it difficult to enforce policies and respond to security incidents effectively, posing a risk of non-compliance and a failure to uphold professional security standards. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of business requirements, security policies, and regulatory obligations. This involves identifying all stakeholders and their needs. The next step is to conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to understand potential threats and vulnerabilities. Based on this assessment, design options are evaluated against criteria such as security effectiveness, scalability, manageability, user experience, and cost. The chosen solution should be the one that best balances these factors, with a clear justification for the trade-offs made. Continuous monitoring, testing, and adaptation are essential to ensure the ongoing effectiveness of the design. Question 8. Strategic planning requires a thorough understanding of the operational needs and regulatory landscape when designing a wireless enterprise network for a U.S.-based financial services organization. Which design approach best balances performance, security, and compliance with U.S. federal regulations? Option A. Prioritize the implementation of the latest high-speed wireless standards and extensive coverage to ensure maximum user productivity and client accessibility, with security measures addressed as a secondary consideration during post-deployment tuning. Option B. Select the most cost-effective wireless hardware and software solutions available on the market, assuming that standard industry security features will be sufficient for a financial services environment. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment and threat modeling exercise, explicitly identifying U.S. regulatory compliance requirements, e.g., HIPAA, PCI DSS, and designing security controls and network architecture to directly mitigate identified risks and meet these mandates. Option D. Focus on deploying a wireless network that offers broad coverage and high bandwidth, utilizing generic security best practices that are widely accepted across various industries, without specific deep dives into U.S. financial sector regulations. Correct answer is A. Prioritize the implementation of the latest high-speed wireless standards and extensive coverage to ensure maximum user productivity and client accessibility, with security measures addressed as a secondary consideration during post-deployment tuning. Explanation. Scenario analysis. Designing a wireless enterprise network for a financial services firm in the United States presents significant challenges due to the highly sensitive nature of the data handled and the stringent regulatory environment. The primary challenge lies in balancing the need for robust, high-performance wireless connectivity with the absolute imperative of data security and compliance with U.S. federal regulations such as HIPAA for healthcare-related financial data, PCI DSS for payment card information, and potentially SEC regulations for publicly traded companies. The firm's reliance on wireless for critical operations, including client transactions and internal communications, amplifies the risk associated with any design flaw. Failure to adhere to these regulations can result in severe financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of client trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a comprehensive risk assessment and threat modeling exercise, directly informed by U.S. regulatory requirements and industry best practices for wireless security. This involves identifying potential vulnerabilities specific to the wireless environment, e.g., rogue access points, unauthorized client access, data interception, and mapping them against the compliance obligations of a U.S. financial services firm. The design must then incorporate security controls that demonstrably mitigate these identified risks and satisfy regulatory mandates. This includes implementing strong authentication mechanisms, e.g., WPA3 Enterprise with 802.1x, robust encryption, network segmentation, intrusion detection and prevention systems, WID/WIPs, and granular access control policies. This approach ensures that the network design is not only functional but also legally compliant and ethically sound, protecting sensitive client data and the firm's integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on maximizing wireless coverage and performance without a commensurate emphasis on security and regulatory compliance is a critical failure. This approach ignores the legal and ethical obligations of a U.S. financial services firm to protect sensitive data, potentially violating HIPAA, PCI DSS, and other relevant U.S. regulations. Such a design would be inherently insecure, leaving the firm vulnerable to data breaches, which carry significant financial and reputational consequences. Prioritizing the lowest cost solution without adequately evaluating its security posture or compliance capabilities is another significant ethical and regulatory lapse. While cost is a factor in any design, it cannot supersede the fundamental requirements for data protection mandated by U.S. law. A cheap solution that fails to meet security standards or regulatory requirements will ultimately prove far more expensive due to the costs associated with breaches, fines, and remediation. Implementing a wireless solution based on outdated security protocols or generic security best practices without specific consideration for the U.S. regulatory landscape is also professionally unacceptable. U.S. financial services firms operate under a specific set of federal laws and industry standards. A design that does not explicitly address these unique requirements risks noncompliance, even if it appears secure in a general sense. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to understand the specific legal and ethical obligations of the client industry within the U.S. jurisdiction. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing wireless networks for regulated industries in the U.S. must adopt a risk-based, compliance-driven decision-making framework. This framework begins with a thorough understanding of the client's business, the data they handle, and the specific U.S. federal and state regulations that apply. The next step involves a detailed threat assessment and vulnerability analysis of the proposed wireless architecture. Security controls and design choices must then be directly mapped to mitigating identified risks and satisfying regulatory requirements. Documentation of this process, including risk assessments, compliance justifications, and security control implementations, is crucial for demonstrating due diligence and for future audits. Continuous monitoring and periodic reassessment of the wireless environment against evolving threats and regulatory changes are also essential components of professional practice. Question 9. To address the challenge of designing a secure and compliant wireless network for a U.S.-based hospital, which approach best balances patient data protection, regulatory adherence, and operational reliability. Option A. Focus on deploying the most cost-effective wireless access points and infrastructure to minimize capital expenditure, assuming that standard Wi-Fi security protocols are sufficient for general network access. Option B. Design the network with minimal security controls to ensure maximum wireless coverage and signal strength across the entire facility, with the intention of addressing any security concerns only if a specific incident occurs. Option C. Prioritize the implementation of advanced wireless security features like WPA3 Enterprise with 802.1x/radius, robust encryption, network segmentation, and intrusion detection/prevention systems, coupled with a comprehensive risk assessment and regular security audits to meet HIPAA requirements. Option D. Implement the latest generation of wireless technology immediately upon its release. Assuming that newer technologies inherently offer superior security and performance without requiring specific validation against existing healthcare regulations. The correct answer is C. Prioritize the implementation of advanced wireless security features like WPA3 Enterprise with 802.1x/radius, robust encryption, network segmentation, and intrusion detection/prevention systems, coupled with a comprehensive risk assessment and regular security audits to meet HIPAA requirements. Explanation. Scenario analysis. Designing a wireless network for a healthcare facility presents significant professional challenges due to the stringent regulatory environment and the critical nature of the services provided. The primary concern is patient data privacy and security, governed by regulations like HIPAA in the United States. Any design decision must prioritize compliance, ensuring that protected health information, FI, is safeguarded against unauthorized access, breaches, and loss. Furthermore, the network must be highly available and reliable to support life-critical applications and continuous patient care. The complexity arises from balancing these critical requirements with performance, scalability, and cost-effectiveness, all while navigating evolving wireless technologies and threat landscapes. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment and a layered security strategy, directly aligned with U.S. regulatory frameworks such as HIPAA Security Rule. This approach mandates the implementation of administrative, physical, and technical safeguards. For wireless networks, this translates to robust authentication mechanisms, e.g., WPA3 Enterprise with 802.1x/radius, strong encryption protocols, network segmentation, VLAN, to isolate sensitive traffic, and intrusion detection/prevention systems, WID/WIPS. Regular security audits and penetration testing are also crucial to identify and remediate vulnerabilities proactively. This methodology ensures that patient data is protected, regulatory compliance is maintained, and the network's integrity supports uninterrupted healthcare operations, representing best professional practice by prioritizing patient safety and data confidentiality. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a design that prioritizes only cost savings without a thorough security and compliance review would be a significant regulatory failure. For instance, opting for simpler, less secure authentication methods or skipping network segmentation to reduce hardware costs directly violates HIPAA technical safeguards, which require appropriate access controls and encryption. This exposes PHI to unauthorized access and potential breaches, leading to severe legal penalties and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach would be to deploy the latest wireless technology without validating its compliance with existing healthcare regulations or assessing its security posture. While innovation is important, introducing new technologies without understanding their security implications or ensuring they meet HIPAA requirements, e.g., data encryption standards, audit logging capabilities, can inadvertently create new vulnerabilities. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to adhere to the principle of security by design mandated by regulatory bodies. A third incorrect approach involves neglecting the need for continuous monitoring and incident response planning. A secure wireless network is not a static entity. It requires ongoing vigilance. Failing to implement WID/WIPS or establish clear protocols for responding to security incidents means that potential threats may go undetected or unaddressed, increasing the risk of a data breach. This oversight is a direct contravention of HIPAA requirements for security management processes, including risk analysis and management. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing wireless networks in regulated environments like U.S. healthcare must adopt a risk-based decision-making framework. This framework begins with a thorough understanding of the applicable regulations, e.g., HIPAA. The next step is to identify all potential risks to data confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Based on these risks, a layered security strategy should be developed, incorporating technical, physical, and administrative controls. This strategy must be documented, implemented, and continuously monitored and updated. Regular training for IT staff on security best practices and regulatory requirements is also essential. The decision-making process should always prioritize compliance and security, with performance and cost being secondary considerations that must be achieved within the bounds of regulatory mandates. Question 10. The assessment process reveals that a client is experiencing significant wireless performance issues and has requested the immediate deployment of a new high-density wireless access point model throughout their facility, citing this as the sole solution. However, preliminary network diagnostics suggest potential interference from legacy equipment and suboptimal channel planning, which may be exacerbated by the proposed access point density. The client insists on their proposed solution, emphasizing speed and user experience for their critical business applications. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation while adhering to professional design principles and regulatory compliance? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive site survey and spectrum analysis to identify interference sources and optimal channel usage. Then present data-driven findings to the client, proposing a phased approach that may include the new access points, but also addresses infrastructure limitations and regulatory constraints. Option B. Focus solely on upgrading the client's end-user devices to newer models that support higher Wi-Fi standards, as this is often the bottleneck for perceived performance, and defer any network infrastructure changes. Option C. Proceed with a standard wireless network design based on general best practices for enterprise networks, without further investigation into the client's specific performance complaints or their proposed solution, as the existing infrastructure is likely adequate. Option D. Immediately deploy the client's requested high-density access points, assuming their assessment of the problem is correct and that increased density will inherently resolve performance issues and address any regulatory concerns post-deployment. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive site survey and spectrum analysis to identify interference sources and optimal channel usage, then present data-driven findings to the client, proposing a phased approach that may include the new access points, but also addresses infrastructure limitations and regulatory constraints. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in wireless network design, where a client's stated requirements for a new wireless network clash with the practical limitations imposed by existing infrastructure and regulatory constraints. The challenge lies in balancing the client's desired user experience and functionality with the technical feasibility and legal compliance of the proposed solution. A designer must navigate potential conflicts between performance expectations, budget, and the need to adhere to specific wireless regulations, which can vary significantly by region and impact channel usage, power levels, and device certifications. Failure to address these conflicts proactively can lead to project delays, cost overruns, and a non-compliant network. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough investigation into the root cause of the performance discrepancy and a collaborative effort to align client expectations with achievable outcomes. This begins with validating the client's perception of performance issues through objective testing and data analysis, rather than immediately accepting their proposed solution. It then requires a detailed assessment of the existing infrastructure's capabilities and limitations, including its compatibility with the client's desired applications and the regulatory environment. Finally, it necessitates a transparent discussion with the client, presenting data-driven findings and proposing alternative, compliant, and cost-effective solutions that meet their core business needs. This approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes evidence-based decision-making, client education, and adherence to regulatory frameworks, ensuring a robust, reliable, and legally sound network design. It demonstrates a commitment to delivering value by solving the underlying problem, not just implementing a potentially flawed client request. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the client's proposed solution without further investigation is professionally unacceptable because it bypasses critical due diligence. This approach risks deploying a solution that may not address the actual problem, could be inefficient, or worse, might violate specific wireless regulations, e.g., using unauthorized frequencies or power levels, which could lead to interference penalties or legal action. It also fails to educate the client on the technical realities and potential pitfalls of their request, fostering a potentially adversarial relationship if the solution proves ineffective. Focusing solely on upgrading the client's devices without assessing the network infrastructure is also professionally unsound. While device upgrades can sometimes improve performance, they are often a symptom fix rather than a root cause solution. If the underlying network is congested, poorly configured, or operating under regulatory restrictions, new devices will likely offer only marginal improvements or fail to resolve the issue entirely. This approach neglects the holistic nature of wireless network design and can lead to wasted investment and continued client dissatisfaction. Ignoring the client's concerns and proceeding with a standard design based on general best practices is professionally negligent. While adherence to general best practices is important, it does not absolve the designer of the responsibility to investigate specific client-reported issues. This approach dismisses valuable user feedback and can result in a network that, while technically sound in a vacuum, fails to meet the client's unique operational requirements or address their perceived problems, leading to a breakdown in trust and project success. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with active listening and problem definition. This involves understanding the client's stated problem and their proposed solution, but critically, probing to understand the underlying business need. The next step is data gathering and analysis, which includes objective performance testing, infrastructure assessment, and a thorough review of relevant regulatory requirements for the specific deployment region. This is followed by solution exploration, where multiple options are considered, evaluating their technical feasibility, cost-effectiveness, and regulatory compliance. Finally, the professional must engage in transparent communication with the client, presenting findings, explaining trade-offs, and collaboratively selecting the optimal solution that balances business objectives, technical constraints, and regulatory mandates. Question 11. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new Wi-Fi 6E solution will significantly improve user experience and enable new applications, but it requires operating in the 6 GHz band, which has specific regulatory considerations. What is the most critical factor to assess during the impact assessment phase to ensure long-term success and compliance within the U.S. regulatory framework? Option A. A projected reduction in operational expenses due to simplified network management tools. Option B. The potential for increased network throughput and reduced latency for critical applications. Option C. The vendor's claims regarding the solution's backward compatibility with older wireless standards. Option D. The detailed compliance of the proposed 6 GHz band operation with FCC rules, including spectrum access requirements and device certification. The correct answer is B. The potential for increased network throughput and reduced latency for critical applications. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in wireless network design, balancing the immediate need for enhanced user experience and security with the long-term implications of technology adoption and regulatory compliance. The professional challenge lies in accurately assessing the impact of a proposed solution, not just on technical performance, but also on operational costs, user adoption, and adherence to evolving wireless regulations. A thorough impact assessment requires looking beyond the initial deployment costs to consider ongoing maintenance, potential for future upgrades, and the risk of non-compliance. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive evaluation that considers all facets of the proposed solution's lifecycle. This includes a detailed understanding of the current regulatory landscape, potential future changes, and how the proposed design aligns with these requirements. By focusing on the long-term operational efficiency, scalability, and adherence to the specified regulatory framework, in this case, implied U.S. regulations for a Cisco exam, this approach minimizes the risk of costly redesigns or penalties. It demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to sustainable, compliant network infrastructure. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate performance gains without considering the regulatory implications is professionally unacceptable. For instance, implementing a solution that utilizes spectrum in a manner not fully compliant with FCC regulations, even if it offers superior performance in the short term, creates significant ethical and legal risks. This could lead to fines, forced equipment changes, and reputational damage. Similarly, an approach that overlooks the impact on existing infrastructure or user training might lead to operational inefficiencies and a failure to achieve the desired benefits, undermining the project's objectives and potentially violating service-level agreements or internal IT policies. Another failure would be to disregard the total cost of ownership, including ongoing licensing, maintenance, and potential future regulatory compliance costs, leading to budget overruns and a financially unsustainable solution. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of project objectives, followed by a thorough impact assessment. This assessment must encompass technical, operational, financial, and regulatory dimensions. Engaging stakeholders, conducting pilot programs, and staying abreast of regulatory updates are crucial steps. The process should involve a risk-benefit analysis where potential risks, including regulatory noncompliance and operational challenges, are weighed against the anticipated benefits. This systematic approach ensures that the chosen design is not only technically sound, but also operationally viable, financially responsible, and legally compliant. Question 12. The evaluation methodology shows that a proposed upgrade to the enterprise wireless network infrastructure, including the introduction of a new Wi-Fi standard and enhanced security protocols, requires a comprehensive impact assessment. Which approach best ensures that the assessment addresses potential disruptions to critical business operations and user productivity, while adhering to the principles of responsible network design? Option A. Review vendor documentation for the new wireless hardware and software, assuming that any performance enhancements will automatically translate to improved business outcomes. Option B. Engage with key business unit leaders and end-user representatives to understand their current reliance on the wireless network, identify critical applications, and document potential workflow disruptions before and after the proposed changes. Option C. Conduct a pilot deployment in a non-critical area and gather feedback from a small group of IT staff to gauge performance improvements. Option D. Perform a detailed analysis of the technical specifications of the new wireless standard and security protocols, focusing on throughput and latency metrics. The correct answer is C. Conduct a pilot deployment in a non-critical area and gather feedback from a small group of IT staff to gauge performance improvements. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent complexity of assessing the impact of wireless network changes on a diverse user base and critical business operations. The need for a thorough impact assessment stems directly from the regulatory framework governing enterprise network design and deployment, which mandates ensuring service availability, security, and compliance with industry standards. The Cisco 300-360 exam emphasizes designing robust and reliable wireless solutions, and a key component of this is understanding the downstream effects of any proposed changes. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it adopts a systematic and comprehensive methodology for impact assessment. This involves identifying all stakeholders, understanding their specific needs and dependencies on the wireless network, and then meticulously evaluating how proposed changes might affect these aspects. This proactive approach minimizes the risk of unforeseen disruptions, security vulnerabilities, or non-compliance issues. It aligns with the ethical obligation to provide a stable and secure network service that supports business objectives and user productivity, as implicitly required by the principles of responsible network design and management within the Cisco ecosystem. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical performance metrics without considering user experience or business criticality fails to meet the comprehensive requirements of impact assessment. This oversight can lead to significant operational disruptions, user dissatisfaction, and potential breaches of service-level agreements, which can have regulatory implications if they impact compliance or data integrity. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes cost savings over a thorough assessment risks introducing vulnerabilities or performance degradations that could lead to security incidents or service outages, thereby violating the implicit duty of care to maintain a secure and reliable network. A third incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or limited testing overlooks the potential for widespread issues and fails to provide the objective data necessary for informed decision-making, thus demonstrating a lack of due diligence and professional rigor. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the scope and objectives of the impact assessment. This involves identifying all potential impacts, both positive and negative, across technical, operational, and business domains. Subsequently, Data collection and analysis should be conducted using appropriate tools and methodologies. Stakeholder engagement is crucial throughout the process to gather diverse perspectives and validate findings. Finally, the assessment should culminate in actionable recommendations, including mitigation strategies for identified risks, to ensure that any proposed changes are implemented responsibly and effectively. Question 13. Consider a scenario where a large enterprise in the United States is planning to deploy a new guest wireless network that will allow users to access the internet and internal corporate resources. The IT department proposes a design that prioritizes ease of deployment and immediate user access, with minimal configuration changes to the existing network infrastructure. What is the most critical step the design team must undertake before proceeding with this deployment to ensure compliance with U.S. regulatory frameworks and best professional practices? Option A. Rely solely on the vendor's default security configurations for the new guest wireless network, assuming they meet industry standards. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to identify potential risks to data privacy, network security, and compliance with relevant U.S. federal and state regulations, and develop mitigation strategies. Option C. Immediately deploy the guest wireless network as designed to provide immediate access and gather user feedback for future improvements. Option D. Prioritize the lowest cost solution for the guest wireless network hardware and software to maximize budget efficiency. Correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment to identify potential risks to data privacy, network security, and compliance with relevant U.S. federal and state regulations, and develop mitigation strategies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in wireless network design where the introduction of new services, particularly those involving sensitive data or real-time communication, necessitates a thorough impact assessment. The challenge lies in balancing the desire for enhanced functionality and user experience with the stringent requirements of regulatory compliance and network stability. Failure to adequately assess the impact can lead to non-compliance with data privacy laws, degraded network performance affecting critical operations, and potential security vulnerabilities. A professional challenge is to proactively identify and mitigate these risks before deployment, ensuring the network design supports both business objectives and legal obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that meticulously evaluates the proposed wireless network changes against existing regulatory frameworks, such as those governing data privacy and telecommunications in the United States. This assessment must identify potential impacts on data confidentiality, integrity, and availability, particularly for sensitive information. It requires understanding how the new services will interact with existing network infrastructure, security protocols, and user access policies. Best professional practice dictates a proactive, risk-based methodology. This includes engaging stakeholders from IT security, legal, and business units to gather requirements and concerns. The assessment should document potential risks, propose mitigation strategies, and ensure that any new wireless deployments adhere to established standards like those from NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, for Federal Information Systems, or relevant FCC regulations for spectrum usage and interference. This ensures that the design not only meets functional requirements, but also maintains compliance with U.S. federal regulations and ethical considerations regarding data protection and network integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing new wireless features without a formal impact assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses critical due diligence, potentially leading to non-compliance with U.S. data privacy laws, e.g., HIPAA for healthcare data or state-specific privacy laws, if sensitive information is mishandled or inadequately protected. This approach also risks network instability and performance degradation, which can have operational and financial consequences, and may violate service-level agreements or FCC guidelines regarding interference. Deploying new wireless services based solely on vendor recommendations without independent verification and impact analysis is also professionally unsound. While vendors provide valuable insights, their primary focus is product functionality. They may not fully account for the specific regulatory landscape or the unique operational context of the enterprise within the U.S. jurisdiction. This can lead to designs that are technically sound but legally or ethically deficient, failing to meet the specific requirements of U.S. federal or state regulations concerning data handling and network security, focusing exclusively on cost reduction when designing new wireless capabilities, without considering the impact on security, compliance, or performance, is another critical failure. Cost is a factor, but it should not supersede regulatory obligations or the fundamental need for a secure and reliable network. Prioritizing cost over compliance can result in the adoption of solutions that are cheaper but introduce significant risks of data breaches, regulatory fines, and reputational damage, all of which have far greater long-term financial implications than a thorough impact assessment would incur. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured, risk-aware design process. This begins with clearly defining project scope and objectives, followed by a detailed impact assessment that considers technical, operational, security, and regulatory dimensions. Stakeholder engagement is crucial throughout this process. When evaluating potential solutions, a multifaceted approach is necessary, weighing functionality, security, compliance, performance, and cost. Documenting the assessment, proposed mitigations, and the rationale for design choices provides a clear audit trail and demonstrates due diligence. In situations involving sensitive data or critical operations, a conservative approach that prioritizes compliance and security is always the most professional and ethically responsible choice. Question 14. The investigation demonstrates that a new wireless network design for a large hospital is being considered. The primary goal is to enhance patient care through improved access to electronic health records and real-time monitoring of medical devices. Which approach to assessing the impact of this new wireless network design best aligns with professional best practices and regulatory requirements for protecting patient data and ensuring operational continuity? Option A. Implement the most cost-effective wireless solution that meets basic connectivity needs, assuming that advanced security and privacy features can be added later if specific regulatory concerns arise. Option B. Conduct a thorough impact assessment that identifies all potential risks to patient data privacy and medical device functionality, mapping these risks to specific regulatory requirements such as HIPAA, and designing mitigation strategies accordingly. Option C. Prioritize the deployment of new wireless features that enhance patient experience and staff convenience, with a secondary consideration for potential impacts on data security and medical device operation, addressing any issues reactively. Option D. Focus primarily on achieving the highest possible wireless network performance metrics and throughput to ensure seamless access to patient records and real-time data streams, deferring detailed security and privacy reviews until after deployment. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough impact assessment that identifies all potential risks to patient data privacy and medical device functionality, mapping these risks to specific regulatory requirements such as HIPAA, and designing mitigation strategies accordingly. Explanation. Scenario analysis. Designing a wireless network for a healthcare facility presents significant challenges due to the critical nature of patient care and the stringent regulatory environment. The need for reliable, high-performance wireless connectivity for medical devices, patient records, and communication systems is paramount. Any disruption or compromise of this infrastructure can have direct and severe consequences on patient safety and privacy. The complexity arises from balancing the demand for advanced wireless features with the absolute necessity of compliance with healthcare regulations, such as HIPAA in the U.S., which governs the privacy and security of protected health information. 5. The impact assessment must therefore be thorough, considering not only technical performance, but also the potential ramifications for patient data security, device interoperability, and the continuity of care. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that prioritizes patient safety and data privacy by integrating regulatory compliance from the outset. This means identifying all potential risks associated with the wireless network design, including unauthorized access to PHI, interference with critical medical devices, and service disruptions. The assessment should map these risks against specific HIPAA security rule requirements, such as access controls, audit controls, and transmission security, by proactively identifying vulnerabilities and implementing appropriate safeguards, such as robust encryption, network segmentation, and intrusion detection systems. The design ensures that the wireless infrastructure supports clinical operations without compromising patient confidentiality or safety. This aligns with the ethical obligation to protect patient information and the regulatory mandate to implement appropriate security measures. Incorrect approaches analysis, focusing solely on network performance metrics without considering regulatory implications, is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. For instance, deploying a high-density Wi-Fi network for seamless patient entertainment without adequately assessing its potential to interfere with sensitive medical equipment, or without implementing strong encryption for any transmission of PHI violates HIPAA requirements for safeguarding electronic PHI and ensuring the integrity of medical devices. Prioritizing cost savings over security and compliance measures represents a critical ethical lapse and a direct violation of regulatory mandates. Implementing a less secure, cheaper wireless solution that does not meet HIPAA standards for access control or data encryption, even if it offers adequate performance for non-sensitive applications, exposes the facility to substantial risks of data breaches and regulatory penalties. This approach disregards the fundamental responsibility to protect patient privacy. Adopting a wait-and-see approach to regulatory compliance, where security and privacy considerations are addressed only after a potential issue arises, is professionally irresponsible and legally untenable. This reactive stance fails to meet the proactive security requirements mandated by HIPAA and exposes the organization to significant liability. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential harm to patients and the organization. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing wireless networks in healthcare must adopt a risk-based approach that embeds regulatory compliance into every stage of the design process. This involves a thorough understanding of relevant regulations, e.g., HIPAA in the U.S., identifying all potential threats and vulnerabilities, and implementing controls that mitigate these risks effectively. The decision-making process should be guided by a framework that prioritizes patient safety, data privacy, and operational continuity, ensuring that technical solutions are not only performant, but also secure and compliant. Regular review and updates to the impact assessment and security measures are crucial to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory landscapes. Question 15. Upon reviewing the proposed integration of a new suite of smart building EOT sensors and actuators into an existing enterprise wireless network, what is the most critical initial step to ensure the design adheres to all relevant U.S. regulatory frameworks and ethical data handling practices? Option A. Assume that all EOT devices procured from reputable vendors are compliant with U.S. regulations and will not introduce any new data privacy risks, proceeding with deployment after basic network connectivity is confirmed. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive assessment of the EOT device's radio frequency emissions, power levels, and data transmission protocols against FCC Part 15 regulations, and evaluate the data privacy implications of the information they collect and transmit in accordance with relevant U.S. privacy laws. Option C. Defer the detailed regulatory compliance and data privacy impact assessment until after the initial network integration is complete, addressing any identified issues reactively as they arise during operational testing. Option D. Prioritize the deployment of the EOT devices based on their perceived impact on network performance, focusing on ensuring seamless integration with existing access points and controllers for optimal user experience. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive assessment of the EOT device's radio frequency emissions, power levels, and data transmission protocols against FCC Part 15 regulations, and evaluate the data privacy implications of the information they collect and transmit in accordance with relevant U.S. privacy laws. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in wireless network design, balancing the need for robust, high-performance Wi-Fi with the imperative to comply with evolving regulatory requirements. The introduction of new EOT devices, particularly those with potentially sensitive data transmission capabilities, introduces a layer of complexity. Network designers must not only consider throughput and coverage, but also the legal and ethical implications of data handling and spectrum usage. The challenge lies in proactively identifying and mitigating risks associated with non-compliance before deployment, which can lead to significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and operational disruptions. The rapid pace of technological advancement and regulatory updates necessitates a continuous and adaptive approach to impact assessment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive, multifaceted impact assessment that prioritizes regulatory compliance and data privacy from the outset. This includes a thorough review of all applicable regulations, e.g., FCC Part 15 in the U.S. for unlicensed spectrum, GDPR for data privacy, if applicable to the data handled by the EOT devices, understanding the specific data transmission characteristics of the new EOT devices, and evaluating their potential impact on existing wireless infrastructure and spectrum usage. This proactive stance ensures that the design incorporates necessary security controls, data handling policies, and spectrum management strategies to meet all legal and ethical obligations. By engaging with legal counsel and compliance officers early, the design team can identify potential conflicts and implement solutions that align with both business objectives and regulatory mandates, representing best professional practice. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume that all EOT devices operate within acceptable regulatory parameters without explicit verification. This overlooks the potential for devices to transmit on unauthorized frequencies, exceed power limits, or handle sensitive data in a non-compliant manner, leading to direct violations of spectrum regulations and data privacy laws. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize only performance metrics like speed and coverage, deferring regulatory considerations to a later stage. This reactive strategy is fraught with risk, as retrofitting a design to meet compliance requirements can be costly, time-consuming, and may compromise the original design intent. Furthermore, neglecting to assess the data privacy implications of EOT devices can lead to breaches of data protection laws, resulting in severe penalties and loss of trust. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on vendor assurances regarding compliance without independent verification. Vendors may have varying interpretations of regulations, or their devices may not be certified for the specific operational environment, leading to unforeseen compliance issues. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to impact assessment. This involves identifying potential regulatory and ethical risks associated with new technologies, evaluating the likelihood and severity of these risks, and developing mitigation strategies. A structured process should include 1. Regulatory landscape analysis. Understanding all relevant local, national, and international regulations pertaining to wireless communications and data handling. 2. Technology assessment. Thoroughly evaluating the technical specifications and operational characteristics of new devices, including their spectrum usage and data transmission protocols. 3. Data privacy and security review. Assessing how sensitive data will be collected, stored, transmitted, and protected in compliance with privacy laws. 4. Stakeholder consultation. Engaging with legal, compliance, and security teams, as well as relevant business units, to ensure a holistic understanding of requirements and potential impacts. 5. Documentation and auditing. Maintaining detailed records of the assessment process and implementing mechanisms for ongoing monitoring and auditing to ensure continued compliance. Question 16. Quality control measures reveal that a proposed enterprise wireless network design for new branch office in the United Kingdom intends to utilize a novel Wi-Fi 6E access point solution. This solution operates in the 6 GHz band, which has specific regulatory considerations under UK law and Ofcom guidelines. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance and minimizes risk for this deployment? Option A. Conduct a detailed impact assessment specifically evaluating the proposed Wi-Fi 6E access points against the current UK regulatory framework and Ofcom guidelines for 6 GHz spectrum usage, including any licensing, power, and operational restrictions. Option B. Implement the access points and monitor for any reported interference issues, addressing them only if they arise. Option C. Rely solely on the access point vendor's assurance that the equipment is compliant with international wireless standards without verifying specific UK regulations. Option D. Proceed with the deployment based on the assumption that Wi-Fi 6E operates under general Wi-Fi regulations, as it is a widely adopted standard. The correct answer is A. Conduct a detailed impact assessment specifically evaluating the proposed Wi-Fi 6E access points against the current UK regulatory framework and Ofcom guidelines for 6 GHz spectrum usage, including any licensing, power, and operational restrictions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in wireless network design: the need to balance performance requirements with the constraints imposed by regulatory bodies. Specifically, the introduction of a new wireless technology that operates in a shared spectrum band necessitates a thorough understanding of the regulatory framework governing its use. Failure to comply can lead to significant penalties, service disruption, and reputational damage. The professional challenge lies in proactively identifying and mitigating these risks through a robust impact assessment process, ensuring that the proposed design adheres to all applicable regulations without compromising the intended functionality of the network. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that specifically evaluates the proposed wireless technology against the regulatory framework governing its operation within the target jurisdiction. This includes identifying any licensing requirements, power limitations, spectrum usage rules, and potential interference mitigation obligations. By proactively engaging with regulatory documentation, and if necessary, seeking expert consultation, the design team can ensure that the proposed solution is compliant from the outset. This represents best professional practice because it prioritizes legal and ethical adherence, minimizing future risks and ensuring the long-term viability of the wireless deployment. It demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to responsible technology implementation. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a new wireless technology without a specific regulatory impact assessment is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This approach assumes that existing knowledge or general best practices are sufficient, which is dangerous when dealing with spectrum-dependent technologies. It risks violating specific, often nuanced, regulations that could lead to fines, equipment seizure, or mandatory network shutdowns. Deploying the technology based solely on vendor recommendations, without independent verification against local regulations, is another failure. Vendors may not be fully aware of or prioritize the specific regulatory nuances of every jurisdiction. Relying solely on their guidance can lead to unintentional noncompliance, exposing the organization to legal repercussions and operational instability. Ignoring potential interference issues because the technology is advertised as low interference is a critical oversight. Regulatory bodies often mandate specific interference mitigation strategies or limits, regardless of a technology's inherent characteristics. Failing to assess and address these mandated requirements can result in penalties and disruption to other licensed spectrum users, creating an ethically unsound and legally precarious situation. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing wireless networks must adopt a proactive and risk-aware approach. The decision-making process should begin with a thorough understanding of the project's scope and the technologies involved. For any technology operating in regulated spectrum, a dedicated impact assessment phase is non-negotiable. This assessment should involve 1. Identifying all relevant regulatory bodies and their governing laws for the specific jurisdiction. 2. Analyzing the technical specifications of the proposed technology against these regulations, paying close attention to spectrum usage, power levels, and any mandatory protocols. 3. Consulting with legal or regulatory experts if ambiguities exist. 4. Documenting the findings and incorporating any necessary design modifications or operational procedures to ensure full compliance. This systematic approach ensures that technical innovation is pursued responsibly and ethically, safeguarding the organization and its stakeholders. Question 17. Examination of the data shows that a multinational corporation is deploying a new wireless network across its European headquarters and several branch offices located in different EU member states. The design team has proposed a standardized Wi-Fi 6 deployment using Cisco access points, aiming for maximum client density and coverage. However, initial site surveys indicate that the proposed transmit power levels and channel selection, while optimal for performance in some regions, may exceed the limits set by the European Telecommunications Standards Institute (ETSI) regulations for certain countries within the EU. What is the most critical design consideration to ensure regulatory compliance across all deployed locations? Option A. Prioritizing the highest possible transmit power settings across all access points to ensure consistent, robust coverage regardless of local regulations. Option B. Implementing a dynamic transmit power control (TPC) and channel selection mechanism that automatically adjusts based on real-time ETSI regulatory compliance data for each specific country. Option C, deploying the same access point models and firmware globally, assuming that EU-wide harmonization of wireless regulations makes country-specific adjustments unnecessary. Option D, relying solely on the default configurations provided by the access point manufacturer, as these are generally designed to meet broad international standards. The correct answer is B, implementing a dynamic transmit power control (TPC) and channel selection mechanism that automatically adjusts based on real-time ETSI regulatory compliance data for each specific country. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise wireless design, balancing the need for robust, high-performance Wi-Fi with the strict regulatory requirements governing radio frequency emissions and device operation within a specific jurisdiction. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying these regulations accurately to a practical design, ensuring compliance without unduly compromising network functionality or user experience. The need for careful judgment arises from the potential for significant penalties, operational disruption, and reputational damage if non-compliance occurs. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the specific regulatory framework applicable to the enterprise's operating region. This includes identifying the authorized frequency bands, maximum transmit power levels, channel usage restrictions, and any specific requirements for indoor versus outdoor deployments. A professional designer would consult official documentation from the relevant regulatory body, e.g., FCC in the US, Ofcom in the UK, and leverage Cisco's validated design guides that incorporate these regulatory considerations. The design would then prioritize selecting access points and configuring them to operate strictly within these parameters, potentially involving power reduction, channel selection based on local spectrum usage, and adherence to antenna gain limitations. This represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the legal and operational mandate of the jurisdiction, ensuring the network is not only functional but also lawful and safe to operate, thereby protecting the organization from legal repercussions and ensuring uninterrupted service. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to assume that standard, out-of-the-box configurations for enterprise wireless equipment are universally compliant. This fails to acknowledge that regulations vary significantly by country and even by region within a country. Relying on such assumptions can lead to the deployment of equipment operating at power levels or on frequencies that are illegal in the specified jurisdiction, resulting in regulatory fines and potential confiscation of equipment. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize achieving the highest possible signal strength and coverage without verifying regulatory limits. While seemingly beneficial for network performance, this can easily lead to exceeding authorized power levels or causing interference with other licensed services, which is a direct violation of regulatory mandates. This approach demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the legal framework governing radio communications. A third incorrect approach would be to implement a design based on best practices from a different, unspecified jurisdiction. This is a critical regulatory failure, as it directly violates the requirement to adhere to the laws of the operating region. This systematic process ensures that the network is not only technically sound, but also legally compliant and ethically responsible. Question 18. Performance analysis shows that the proposed enterprise wireless network design for new hospital wing in the United States is experiencing intermittent connectivity issues and lower than expected data throughput in certain areas, despite utilizing high-density access point deployment. The network utilizes the latest Wi-Fi standards and is configured for maximum client capacity. The design team is considering increasing the transmit power of all access points to overcome these performance shortfalls and improve signal strength. What is the most appropriate course of action to address these performance issues while ensuring regulatory compliance? Option A. Immediately increase the transmit power of all access points to the maximum allowed by the hardware manufacturer to boost signal strength. Option B. Conduct a detailed RF site survey to identify sources of interference and optimize channel planning and power levels according to FCC Part 15 regulations. Option C. Deploy additional access points in the affected areas without re-evaluating existing configurations or regulatory constraints. Option D. Implement a proprietary firmware upgrade on the access points that claims to enhance performance without verifying its FCC certification status. The correct answer is B. Conduct a detailed RF site survey to identify sources of interference and optimize channel planning and power levels according to FCC Part 15 regulations. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise wireless design, balancing the need for robust, high-performance Wi-Fi with the strict regulatory requirements governing radio frequency emissions and device operation. The challenge lies in ensuring that the proposed design, while meeting performance goals, does not inadvertently violate FCC regulations, which are paramount for legal operation and public safety. Failure to adhere to these regulations can result in significant fines, equipment confiscation, and operational disruption. The professional must navigate technical specifications and legal mandates simultaneously. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding and application of FCC Part 15 rules, specifically concerning unlicensed radio frequency devices. This includes ensuring that the chosen access points operate within designated frequency bands, e.g., 2, 4 GHz and 5 GHz, do not exceed maximum power output limits, and employ appropriate antenna gain to prevent interference with other licensed services. Furthermore, the design must consider the potential for harmonic emissions and ensure they fall within acceptable limits. Adhering to these FCC mandates is not just a legal obligation, but also a professional responsibility to ensure the reliable and safe operation of the wireless network without causing harmful interference to other critical communication systems. This proactive approach demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to compliant design. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on achieving the highest possible data throughput without verifying compliance with FCC power output limits is a significant regulatory failure. Exceeding these limits can lead to interference with licensed services, such as aviation or public safety communications, which is a direct violation of FCC Part 15. This demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and a disregard for public safety. Implementing a design that utilizes custom or non-certified antennas without proper FCC authorization is another critical regulatory failure. FCC certification ensures that devices and their configurations meet specific emission standards. Using uncertified components bypasses this essential safety and compliance check, potentially leading to unpredictable interference and legal repercussions. Ignoring the potential for interference with existing licensed spectrum users in the vicinity, even if the proposed system operates within general unlicensed bands, is a professional and ethical lapse. While Part 15 allows for unlicensed operation, it does not grant a license to cause interference. A responsible design must account for potential coexistence issues and implement mitigation strategies if necessary, as mandated by the spirit of regulatory compliance. Question 19. Process analysis reveals that a large hospital network is undergoing a wireless infrastructure upgrade. The design must accommodate a diverse range of devices, including patient monitoring systems transmitting sensitive health data, staff mobile devices accessing electronic health records (EHR), and guest access for visitors. The primary concern is ensuring the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of protected health information, FI, in strict accordance with U.S. federal regulations. Which design approach best satisfies these requirements while enabling efficient network operation? Option A. Deploy a segmented wireless architecture featuring separate SSIDs for medical devices, staff devices, and guest access, each with distinct security policies, including WPA3 Enterprise with 802.1x for medical and staff SSIDs, and a captive portal with limited bandwidth for guest access. Option B. Prioritize maximizing wireless signal strength and roaming capabilities across the entire facility, employing basic WPA2 encryption, and assuming that physical security measures will prevent unauthorized access to sensitive data. Option C. Implement a single, high-density wireless network utilizing WPA3 Enterprise with 802.1x authentication for all devices, relying on robust firewall rules at the network edge to segment traffic and protect PHI. Option D. Utilize a single, broad-coverage wireless network with WPA2 PSK encryption for all devices to maximize ease of access and minimize configuration complexity for staff and medical equipment. Correct answer is C. Implement a single high-density wireless network utilizing WPA3 Enterprise with 802.1x authentication for all devices, relying on robust firewall rules at the network edge to segment traffic and protect PHI. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise wireless design, balancing the need for robust, high-performance Wi-Fi with the stringent regulatory requirements of a healthcare environment. The primary challenge lies in ensuring patient data privacy and security, as mandated by regulations like HIPAA in the United States, while simultaneously providing seamless connectivity for critical medical devices and staff. The presence of sensitive protected health information, PHI, necessitates a design that prioritizes encryption, access control, and network segmentation. Failure to adhere to these requirements can result in severe legal penalties, reputational damage, and most importantly, compromise patient safety and privacy. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a multi-layered security strategy that aligns with U.S. regulatory frameworks, specifically HIPAA. This includes implementing strong encryption protocols, WPA3 Enterprise, robust authentication mechanisms, 802.1x with EAP-TLS, and network segmentation using VLAN to isolate sensitive medical devices and PHI from general user traffic. A dedicated wireless network for medical devices, with strict access controls and monitoring, is crucial. This approach directly addresses HIPAA security rule requirements for protecting the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of electronic PHI. By segmenting the network, the attack surface is reduced, and unauthorized access to sensitive data is significantly mitigated. Regular security audits and vulnerability assessments are also integral to maintaining compliance and ensuring the ongoing security posture. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a single, flat wireless network for all users and devices, regardless of their function or data sensitivity, is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach violates HIPAA principles of data protection by exposing PHI to unnecessary risks and unauthorized access. It fails to provide adequate network segmentation, making it easier for malicious actors to compromise sensitive systems. Deploying a wireless network with only pre-shared keys, PSK, for authentication, even with strong encryption, is also unacceptable in a healthcare setting. PSK authentication is inherently less secure than 802.1x, as shared keys can be compromised or leaked, leading to unauthorized access. This method does not provide individual user accountability, which is a key requirement for auditing and compliance under HIPAA. Focusing solely on maximizing Wi-Fi coverage and performance without adequate security controls is another critical failure. While performance is important for operational efficiency, it cannot come at the expense of patient data security and privacy. This approach neglects the fundamental regulatory obligations to protect PHI, leading to potential HIPAA violations. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing wireless networks in regulated environments must adopt a risk-based approach. This involves identifying sensitive data, understanding applicable regulations, e.g., HIPAA in the U.S., and designing a network that mitigates identified risks. Prioritizing security and compliance from the outset, rather than as an afterthought, is paramount. This includes selecting appropriate authentication methods, encryption standards, and network segmentation strategies. Continuous monitoring, regular security assessments, and a clear understanding of the organization's compliance obligations are essential for maintaining a secure and compliant wireless infrastructure. Question 20. Analysis of a scenario where a global retail chain is deploying a new wireless network across its stores in the United States. The design team is considering using high-gain antennas and configuring access points to operate at the maximum power output allowed by the Wi-Fi standards to ensure ubiquitous coverage in large store layouts. However, they are aware that the United States has specific regulations governing radio frequency emissions. Which of the following design considerations best aligns with the absolute priority of adhering to the regulatory framework for wireless networks in the United States? Option A. Utilizing unlicensed spectrum bands without concern for specific channel usage rules, as long as the total transmit power remains below a generic global threshold for unlicensed devices. Option B. Relying on the default configurations of enterprise-grade access points, which are generally designed for broad compatibility, and assuming these defaults will meet all United States regulatory requirements without further investigation. Option C. Prioritizing the use of Wi-Fi 6E access points and ensuring all devices are certified by the FCC for operation within the United States, while configuring power levels and channel selection according to FCC Part 15 rules to avoid interference and ensure legal operation. Option D. Deploying access points with the highest possible transmit power to guarantee seamless coverage across all store areas, assuming that exceeding standard Wi-Fi power limits is acceptable as long as it does not cause noticeable interference to other networks. Correct answer is C. Prioritizing the use of Wi-Fi 6E access points and ensuring all devices are certified by the FCC for operation within the United States, while configuring power levels and channel selection according to FCC Part 15 rules to avoid interference and ensure legal operation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise wireless design, balancing the need for robust, high-performance Wi-Fi with the strict regulatory requirements governing radio frequency emissions and device operation within a specific jurisdiction. The professional challenge lies in understanding and applying these regulations to a practical design, ensuring compliance without compromising user experience or network functionality. The need for careful judgment arises from the potential for significant penalties, network disruption, and reputational damage if non-compliance occurs. The specific jurisdiction's regulations are paramount, and any deviation can have severe consequences. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the specific regulatory framework applicable to the enterprise's location. This includes identifying the governing body, e.g., FCC in the US, Ofcom in the UK, understanding the licensed and unlicensed frequency bands, power output limitations, channel usage restrictions, and any specific requirements for enterprise-grade wireless equipment. A design that adheres to these regulations by selecting appropriate channels, configuring power levels within legal limits, and ensuring proper antenna usage demonstrates best professional practice. This approach prioritizes legal compliance and responsible spectrum utilization, which are ethical imperatives for network professionals. It ensures the network operates harmoniously with other radio services and avoids interference, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the wireless environment. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that prioritizes maximum signal strength and coverage by disregarding regulatory power limits or channel restrictions is professionally unacceptable. This could involve using non-certified equipment or configuring devices beyond their approved parameters. Such actions directly violate regulatory mandates, leading to potential fines, equipment seizure, and legal action. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for responsible spectrum management and the potential to disrupt other licensed radio services. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that all Wi-Fi equipment is inherently compliant without verifying its certification and adherence to the specific jurisdiction standards. This oversight can lead to the deployment of non-compliant devices, even if configured within seemingly reasonable parameters. The regulatory framework often specifies not just operational limits, but also the certification requirements for the hardware itself. Failure to verify this can result in a non-compliant network, even with good intentions. Finally, an approach that relies on outdated or generic regulatory information without consulting the most current and specific guidelines for the target jurisdiction is also flawed. Regulations evolve, and relying on old data can lead to unintentional noncompliance. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to uphold professional responsibility to stay informed about the legal landscape governing their work. Professional reasoning. Professionals designing wireless networks must adopt a proactive and diligent approach to regulatory compliance. This involves 1. Identifying the specific jurisdiction and its relevant regulatory bodies. 2. Consulting the latest official documentation from these bodies regarding Wi-Fi operation, including frequency allocations, power limits, and equipment certification requirements. 3. Selecting and configuring wireless equipment that is certified for use within that jurisdiction and aligns with the identified regulatory constraints. 4. Documenting all design decisions and justifications, particularly those related to regulatory compliance. 5. Regularly reviewing and updating knowledge of regulations, as they may change. This systematic process ensures that the network is not only functional, but also legally and ethically sound, protecting the organization and the professional from potential repercussions.